Jack Nicklaus just won a massive legal battle, $50 million. A Florida jury handed him that verdict, and within hours, every golf headline on the internet carried his name next to the word lawsuit. But here is what those headlines got wrong. That lawsuit was never filed against the PGA Tour. It was never aimed at Brian Rolapp. It was never designed to stop the 2028 Overhaul. The legal action was real. The money was real. But the target was not who you think it is. Someone took two completely separate stories, stitched them into one headline, and sold it to you as truth. Before you decide this is not worth your time, hear me out. Because the actual story is worse than a lawsuit. A lawsuit has an ending. A judge rules. Everyone goes home. What is happening right now between the loudest living voice in golf history and the man redesigning the entire sport for 2028 does not end. It does not have a ruling. It has a casualty. And that casualty is the version of professional golf you have known your entire life. By the time this video ends, you will know exactly what is being stripped from the schedule, who is doing the stripping, and why the one man who built the game into what it is today is being ignored by the people now running it. The part about how Nicklaus is actually fighting back is not what anyone expects. Stay through the next few minutes, because what he did with his words hit harder than any courtroom verdict ever could. Personally, I think when an 18-time major champion speaks publicly and the people in charge walk past him without a single word, that is not a disagreement. That is erasure. Tell me in the comments if you agree, or if the tour has every right to rebuild without consulting its legends. If you are not subscribed, hit that button. This story is not finished, and you need to be here when the next chapter drops. So what exactly is being dismantled? Because the tour is not calling it a schedule adjustment. They are not calling it a format tweak. The language coming out of the PGA Tour's leadership is the word overhaul, a complete structural rebuild of how professional golf operates, set to go live in 2028. And the tournaments that built this sport, the ones tied to names you grew up hearing, the ones that carry 50 years of history in their fairways, are the ones sitting directly in the path of this rebuild. Here is what has been confirmed so far. The tour is splitting its entire calendar into two separate tracks. Two tiers. Events will be sorted, separated, and packaged differently depending on which track they land in. And the sorting criteria is not tradition. It is not prestige. It is not who hosts the event or what it represents to the game. The sorting criteria is commercial value. How much an event can generate, how much it can sell, how much it can feed into the broadcast machine. Now think about what that means for a tournament like the Memorial, a tournament that one man built from nothing in Dublin, Ohio, 50 years ago. A tournament that exists because of who created it and what it stands for. Under this new structure, that history is not the thing that determines where it lands on the track. The money is. And if the Memorial's broadcast numbers do not match the events with bigger corporate sponsors, the Memorial drops. Not because it lacks history, not because it lacks prestige, because it lacks the revenue floor the new system demands. His name has not been spoken yet in this story. It belongs to a man who never played a competitive round for a living, and he is the one holding the pen on every decision you just heard about. The people designing this system did not come up through the sport. They did not spend decades walking these fairways, building relationships with host communities, understanding why certain weeks matter more than others. They came from outside golf. They looked at the calendar the way a spreadsheet gets looked at, and they decided the hierarchy was inefficient. The Memorial, the Arnold Palmer Invitational, the events that carry decades of identity in their name, all of it sorted by revenue potential, not by what it means, not by who built it, by what it can sell. Think about the Arnold Palmer Invitational for a second. Arnold Palmer built Bay Hill into something that mattered because of who he was and how he treated every person who walked through those gates. That tournament carries his fingerprints, his personality, his standard. Under the two-track system, none of that protects it. If the commercial numbers do not hit the threshold, Bay Hill gets sorted down. Palmer's legacy gets sorted down. And no one who built this sport gets a say in the decision. There is a name attached to every one of these decisions. A man who sits at the top of this entire operation. You will hear that name in the next few minutes. But before you do, you need to understand one thing. because this is the part that turns a corporate restructuring into something personal. The man who built the tournament this overhaul is about to flatten has been watching all of it happen. He has been speaking publicly, and nobody in charge is answering him. That silence is not an accident. The man breaking it is not doing it quietly, and what he said at the memorial this year made the entire golf world stop and listen. His name is Brian Rolapp, former NFL executive, no competitive golf background, no decades spent inside the ropes, no history with the players, the courses, or the communities that keep this sport alive. He was brought in to run PGA Tour Enterprises, the for-profit arm of the tour, the part that treats professional golf as a commercial product to be optimized, packaged, and sold to the highest broadcast bidder. And his first major project is the 2028 Overhaul, the two-track system, the flattening of every event into equal commercial units, the erasure of the idea that some tournaments mean more because of who built them. Rolapp has spoken publicly about his vision. He uses words like reimagining. He talks about making every week matter equally. He describes the current structure, the one where the memorial carries different weight than a fall event, where the Arnold Palmer Invitational means something different because of whose name is on it, as a problem to be solved, not a tradition to be protected, a problem. Every word he said was aimed directly at the people who built this sport, and he knew exactly who would hear them. Rolapp has acknowledged publicly that he expects difficult conversations with the legends of the game. He used that exact phrase, difficult conversations. He knows the people who built this sport disagree with what he is building. He knows their names. He knows their tournaments are in his crosshairs. He is proceeding anyway, not because he does not care, because caring is not part of the job description. The job is revenue. The job is broadcast windows. The job is making every single week on the calendar worth the same amount of money to the people buying the rights. And that is where this stops being a business story and becomes something that should make every person who loves this game pay very close attention. Because the man Rolapp is about to have that difficult conversation with is not a retired player collecting a paycheck on the senior tour. He is not a broadcaster offering hot takes for ratings. He is the most decorated player in the history of professional golf. 18 major championships, a tournament he built with his own hands 50 years ago, a voice that has carried weight in this sport since before most people running it today were born. What Nicklaus did next was not a private phone call. It was not a closed-door meeting. He stood in front of cameras at his own tournament and said everything out loud. Jack Nicklaus has been speaking, not privately, not through intermediaries, not in rooms where nothing gets recorded and nothing changes, publicly, on the record, in front of cameras and microphones, at the memorial itself, where the world was already watching. He has said the schedule is too congested. He has said the marquee events are being bunched together in a way that devalues them. He has said he is not exactly in favor of what is being planned. And when a man who has won 18 majors says he is not in favor of something, that is not a suggestion. That is a warning. Specifically, Nicklaus has raised concerns about what the 2028 structure does to host invitational tournaments. His tournament, the Memorial, 50 years of history. 50 years of building a field, building a community, building an identity around the idea that this event exists because one man decided it should exist and then spent 5 decades proving it mattered. Under Rolapp's two-track system, that identity is not the thing that protects the Memorial. Commercial value protects it. If the numbers work, the Memorial survives. If the numbers do not work, the Memorial gets sorted into the lower track and treated like every other stop on the calendar. 50 years of legacy, reduced to a line on a balance sheet. Nicklaus watched it happen in real time and refused to stay quiet about it. He warned that the bunched schedule would hurt the events that depend on breathing room. The Memorial needs space around it. It needs its own week, its own identity, its own moment in the sun. Pack it between 3 other events, and it becomes just another week. Players skip it. Broadcasters treat it as filler. Fans stop paying attention. That is not speculation. That is what happens when you remove the hierarchy that makes one week different from the next. Nicklaus has seen it coming. He has said so publicly, and the response from the tour's leadership has been silence, not disagreement, not engagement, not a meeting, not a phone call, not a public acknowledgement that the greatest player in the history of the game has a concern worth addressing. Silence. Here is where the two stories collide, and here is where the headline you saw starts to make sense in a way you were not expecting. The $50 million verdict. The Florida jury. The legal battle that set every golf headline on fire. That lawsuit was not filed against the PGA Tour. It was not filed against Brian Rolapp. It was filed against the Nicklaus companies, the business that carried his name, the business he built over decades. His former partners in that company made a claim publicly. They said Jack Nicklaus entertained a $750 million offer to join LIV Golf. They said he considered it. They put his name next to the rival tour, next to the thing he had publicly opposed, and they did it for leverage in a business dispute. Nicklaus sued them for defamation. A Florida jury listened to the evidence. $50 million. That was the verdict. And in the aftermath, Nicklaus reacquired full control of the Nicklaus companies. His name, his legacy, his life's work, back in his hands. He won that fight completely. The fight he is losing right now is the one happening on the schedule, and no courtroom can fix it. Because here is what nobody in the boardroom wants to say out loud. Golf is the only major sport on earth that runs on an honor system. No referees on every hole. No video review catching every movement. The player calls the penalty on himself. The player is the first and final authority on whether his ball moved, whether his lie was improved, whether the rules were honored. That system works because the people inside it believe the game is bigger than any single tournament, any single payout, any single broadcast deal. When you flatten the hierarchy, when you make every event equally valuable, when you strip the history out of the tournaments that carry it, you are not just changing a schedule, you are telling the people who play this game that the thing they are honoring does not matter as much as the thing they are selling. And consider what that does to the next generation. A kid growing up watching golf right now is learning that the memorial means something because Jack Nicklaus built it. That Bay Hill means something because Arnold Palmer stood at the first tee and shook every player's hand. That these events carry weight because of the people who gave their lives to them. Now imagine that kid grows up and the two-track system has been running for 5 years. The memorial is in track 2. Bay Hill is in track 2. The names are still there, but the weight is gone. The hierarchy that told you why these weeks mattered has been replaced by a commercial sorting algorithm. And the kid has no reference point for what was lost because he never saw it exist in the first place. Nicklaus understands that. He has been saying it in every interview, every press conference, every public appearance where a microphone is in front of him. The sport he dedicated his life to is being redesigned by people who never loved it the way he does. People who see a spreadsheet where he sees a legacy. People who see a broadcast window where he sees 50 years of a community showing up to watch golf played at its highest level on a course that means something. And the people holding the pen have not written back. Not once. Not publicly, not privately, not in any way that acknowledges the man speaking. That is the war. Not a lawsuit against Rolapp. Not an injunction against the tour. Something worse than both. A man speaking into silence. The most important voice in the history of the game, saying this is wrong, saying this will break something that cannot be rebuilt, saying it loudly and clearly and on the record, and the people in charge proceeding as if he said nothing, as if the memorial is just another line item, as if 50 years of history is a rounding error in a 5-year financial projection. So here is where this leaves you, and here is where your voice is the only thing left that might matter. The 2028 Overhaul is moving forward. The Future Competition Committee is building it. Rolapp is executing it. Nicklaus has spoken, and his words are on the record, and they have changed nothing in the boardroom. The memorial will be affected. The schedule will be congested. The hierarchy will be flattened. That is the current reality. No lawsuit is stopping it. No court order is pausing it. The only thing that has ever slowed down a decision like this in the history of professional golf is the weight of public opinion from the people who actually watch, play, and love this game. And right now, that opinion has not been loud enough. Not yet. The boardroom is quiet because the fans are quiet. The moment the fans get loud, the calculus changes. That is how it has always worked in this sport. The players, the legends, the communities, they all answer to the people who show up. And the people who show up are the only ones who can decide whether the memorial matters more than a line on a revenue chart. Should the tour rebuild without consulting the legends who built it, or does Nicklaus deserve a seat at that table? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one. If you are not subscribed, do it now. The 2028 season is still being written, and you need to be here when the next chapter drops.